Good morning, Matt Waldman. We're like in the thick of it at the rookie mini camps and the hype that's associated with that, and all the good stuff going on. Schedule release weeks here, and I know you're very enthusiastic about that. That's a tentpole event for you, correct?
Schedule releasing is happening this week. I'm in the middle of a draft with you. We're having fun there because I have a bajillion picks for the first time in forever because I traded out. You gave me some of yours, and so did Mike Dempsey because I was like, I'm blowing up this fucking team that I think I won 2 years ago on defense and bailing wire, and now I'm trying to see if I can construct an offense. But yeah, man, I guess there's always something going on with the NFL, and they're always trying to make it an event. And
365-day-a-year reality show. By the way, it's not just a single day.
The real world
NFL, multiple days.
Yes,
spread out over multiple days. The first game was released. It'll be Dallas in the opener against Philadelphia. There's a number of international games where we already know the home team. We'll learn over the next couple days the teams that will be joining them, and then Wednesday night we'll get the full schedule. Also, as notable is Christmas Day, 3 games on a Thursday. That's going to sit well with the players, I'm sure. So.
The real world NFL. There we go.
Hey, what about the giveaway? But by the way, hi, I'm Bob Harris.
Yes.
Glad to meet you. That's Matt Waldman, author of the Rookie Scouting Portfolio. It's a great piece of work. You should get it. You'll find it at mattwaldman.com. You can find my work at Football Guys. Matt's work there as well. The giveaway. What are we doing about this?
Well, we had our 2 winners, and I'm sorry right now. Monday this week has been. How about I put it this way? And I think people can appreciate this. I've just been fucking relaxing all week and barely doing anything. So I did do the giveaway, and I congratulate our 2 winners who already got their RSPs. The winning answer was William Andrews, for those of you who replied, and there were a ton of you that did, and I appreciate you. But I pretty much got on my computer once a day to check to make sure there wasn't any issues with anything going on with sales of the RSP, and I pretty much took my week off so that I can kind of recharge and get started here. So the 2 winners, congratulations. We'll probably do another contest in a couple of weeks. But I appreciate you guys. And yeah, William Andrews, he actually ran over Ronnie Lott twice in a couple of games that were in pretty impressive fashion. But the one I remember, they had to help Ronnie Lott off the field.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that. I do. I look forward to more giveaways. There was a giveaway. I guess it was a trade away this week in the NFL. We'll talk about it. I think it's kind of interesting when these trades come up. I want to start with the quarterback situation, though. The big headline of the weekend, the most recent headline, Derek Carr retired. I don't know why that's a headline. I've been expecting something. Something was up, right? Like, you knew something was up when the Saints invested the 40th pick in a quarterback, the highest pick they've invested in a quarterback since Archie Moore back in the day. And also, it was Tyler Shough is the pick. It reminds me, Kellen Moore was in Dallas when Dak Prescott took over for Tony Romo, right? Like, so is he envisioning something here? Is Tyler Shough ready to be an NFL starter? Feel it or fuck it?
I'm going to say fuck it. He's not ready, but I don't know if any of the ones are. Yeah, ready or not. I mean, Jake Haener to me is probably conceptually the best quarterback of the 3, but Shough has the most physical talent. And then we got our man from last year out of South Carolina, who I don't remember his name right now, but the Oklahoma by way of South Carolina, who played last year in this offense, the one that everyone is looking at.
Oh, Rasheed Shaheed.
No, the quarterback.
Oh, the quarterback. Oh, Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, Spencer Rattler. Yeah, I was thinking rattled, but I didn't want to say that. But yeah, I mean, he's probably the combination of both those guys just based on the experiences that he had as a starter last year. So, I mean, I think Shough is their hope, and I would look at him as kind of a how would I put it? Kind of a remedial Jay Cutler. in the way that he
without
plays.
cigarettes.
Without the cigarettes, and without the pocket skills. So
He's big and mobile, though. I mean, like, is there anything to any of that? No.
Yeah, I mean, look, he can throw and move into his left. He's got the Greg Cosell's of the world excited because big arms. He likes big arms, and he can't lie about it. That kind of thing. But he's got a big arm. He can throw on the move. There's some creativity there. When he is accurate, it looks really impressive. It's just that, again, pressure is one of those things where if he can identify the pressure early, like Kenny Pickett, he can solve problems. When the pressure kind of catches him by surprise or he doesn't identify the source of it correctly, he gets rattled and he doesn't process well in those situations. So you're going to see ups and downs with Tyler Shough. I'll say that if he is, in fact, going to be the starter for the Saints and there isn't somebody else that they bring in, a veteran who the rumors are that he was waiting for the schedule to come out before he was going to sign with a team like the Steelers. That's that's another one I'd say fuck it to, Bob. It's like, do you really think Aaron Rodgers is waiting for the schedule?
The media dislike, like, you could think whatever you want of Aaron Rodgers, right? But there's two things about Aaron Rodgers. He's reminiscent of other figures in our society today. Everyone hates him in the media. Also, the media can't put him on their pages enough because people click on it. So that was a hugely clickbaity piece, speculative piece by Mike Florio, who often clickbaities away about Aaron Rodgers. We'll see what happens. Sounds like to me, and we'll talk about it maybe a little bit here. The Steelers have a pretty good sense of what's going on. Brooke Pryor from ESPN had reported that before the trade that we're going to talk about, the George Pickens trade to Dallas, that Rodgers was in the loop on that. And, just the talk from Art Rooney too, the draft, the second night of the draft or the first night of the draft is we're not letting this change. We feel confident we're going to have Aaron Rodgers. I think they're fairly confident. But yes, he'll wait for the schedule release so he can usurp the NFL of all its attention.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're probably waiting to sign him just because if they signed him now and then they had to give him excuses to not go until camp, then there's going to be a bunch of things where they're going to question about leadership and questions about consistency within the organization and all that stuff. And I think that they just decided, look, you're going to be here in late July. We'll be there waiting on you.
Right. But, that said, when you have another team get an opening, prices go up, things, talks probably can happen. So I'm sure there will be a lot of angsty discussions. Kellen Moore's discussion on Saturday when the Carr news broke was that it's a three-way battle with Shough, Haener, and Rattler. We kind of got a taste of Rattler last year. It wasn't fantastic, but I don't know what their expectations were. And same with Haener. So we'll see what happens. The three-way competition talked about the possibility of adding a veteran, said they weren't there yet. And my guess is the Saints have known this was the outcome all along, that Derek Carr wasn't going to play. This seemed to be more about sorting out the money. When the news leaked out that he had a shoulder issue that might cost him the 2025 season before the draft, he kind of said, what's up here? You just a change of coach. It all made a lot of sense to me that Derek Carr wasn't going to be around, and this is the way they can get out of paying him. He can get out of having his money clawed back, all kinds of things. So,
and he could compete with Kirk Cousins for another job in a year.
Right. Or maybe if the Saints find themselves in a position, well, it's within the division, but, at some point somebody's going to go trolling for Kirk Cousins, and the Saints or the Falcons are quietly biding their time until that happens. We'll see who it is. Probably won't happen within their division, I reckon. So that would make a ton of sense. But there will be teams out there looking for Kirk Cousins, and we'll see what happens with Derek Carr. Maybe we've seen the last of him. Wouldn't that be a shame? If we've seen the last of him, certainly if Chris Olave has seen the last of him, the likes of Michael Thomas, Josh Olave, Chris's brother, Robert Griffin III, all of whom highly critical of Derek Carr's throwing into Chris Olave, the hospital balls, they called them. Multiple concussions for Olave. Does he benefit from a change of quarterback?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of like the bombing of Dresden. The bombing is over. You still got to deal with the cleanup, you know. So I think that you look at you look at the quarterbacks that he has, and none of them stand out to me as like, oh, he's going to benefit unbelievably from any of those three because, again, you're going to have to make sure that everybody's on the same page, that people are processing well, that they're able to make plays. And there's a lot of ifs and unknowns with the players that he's going to deal with. But he knows at least that the albatross around his neck, known as Derek Carr, is no longer, an issue. And then on top of it, I'm sure that Michael Thomas is probably somewhere dancing right now.
He's got a red eye there for Derek Carr. There's no doubt about
I
that.
think he's been singing "Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead" for like the past few days. But looking at this overall, I mean, I don't think you can bump Chris Olave way up your boards because of this. But it is a little sliver of light, for him to at least crawl towards.
I think that's the same for the guy I mentioned earlier when I was distracted by an angry cat nibbling at my ankle, as it still is. Rasheed Shaheed was playing lights out football early last season with Derek Carr, and now he won't have Derek Carr. What should our expectations be for what is Rashid Shaheed without some certain connection? What is he, just standalone?
He's a talented player, but probably, again, limited. He's probably a better hands version of Marquez Valdes-Scantling in terms of the way they might use him and roll. The best hope for him is that Tyler Shough is good. If Tyler Shough can be good, then you're going to get a downfield thrower that Shaheed could work with, and that could be a positive. But he goes from being a guy that people were targeting last year with the hope that he's developed into a legitimate wide receiver 2 and get him at a wide receiver 3-esque price or later.
He's gone as wide receiver 55 right now.
Well, I was saying before, last year.
Yeah.
This year, I think wide receiver 55 is exactly where you want him.
Right.
Because it's just as variable as it gets, and you're just taking an early shot to see if it hits, and if it doesn't, then you're dumping him by the side of the road.
I agree. That's the perfect price. I'm feeling that. All right, let's talk about the George Pickens trade. This deal was a great move for the Cowboys. Feel it or fuck it.
Fuck it. Because as good as George Pickens can be, the reasons that, people talk about the dysfunction in Pittsburgh and that there's all this dysfunction. Is it really the dysfunction in Pittsburgh is the fact that the analyst side of media doesn't like Arthur Smith and that the general media doesn't like Aaron Rodgers and that's the dysfunction? Or
is the dysfunction that George Pickens is a flaky guy, prone to emotional outbursts and struggling with discipline on the field?
Yeah, exactly. And to me, you look at the Cowboys' latest. When you look at the Cowboys' moves, let's see, they got Mingo. That was a real coup, right? And they overpaid for him, right? Let's see, they held on to a player in Rico Dowdle for 3-4 years while he was injured. To see what they got out of him, what they could get out of him in a full-time scenario, and they got 1,100 yards out of him, and they promptly let him walk so that they could get Miles Sanders and Javonte Williams, neither of who I think might be as good as Rico Dowdle, as much as their draft capital and their buzz may have you indicate as such. I think Carolina wound up, giving away Miles, letting Miles Sanders walk and getting a massive upgrade to their backup or co-starter in that room and what Dowdle can be. And then on top of that, you now bring in George Pickens, who, massive talent, but if Pittsburgh doesn't want him, that tells you that this kid's a fuck up. I hate to say. Yeah.
Let me read the headline of my Dick Tracy watch that just came in while you were talking from your beloved Michael Florio over at Pro Football Talk. When the Steelers explained the George Pickens trade by calling it a fresh start, quote unquote, that's really a nice way of saying get lost.
Yes, exactly. I mean, this kid is a massive talent. No doubt about it. But when you watch his game, it's raw. It's raw athletic ability with good hand-eye coordination. and he could be so much more than that. And I think that at the end of the day, he's going to have to prove to the Steelers that he is someone who. Let me make sure that my dog isn't eating a battery and make sure he didn't get one. All right. Nothing there. Just false alarm. But I thought for instance, he punctured a hole in a battery the other day, so he found one somewhere that we were remiss in keeping it away. So anyway, but yeah, back. I may be the George Pickens of dog owners at this point, but but no. Pickens is very talented, but he's got things to work on, and the Cowboys seem to be about making splashes and getting guys who are athletically talented, but maybe there's a lot of work to be done still. So, in this offense, they're probably going to isolate him in a role where he can do what he does well. And we're going to see big moments with him. But I feel like that they just got Marquez Valdes-Scantling with better hands, but maybe not as good routes and a bad attitude in a town where that worships those players. And, they're either hypercritical or they are absolutely in love with them. And I think that, Dallas, the city of Dallas seems to have this kind of like high school social scene, like high school football social scene, where it's kind of like these guys can kind of get away with a lot. They're given a lot of leeway, and maybe they shouldn't be.
Yeah, maybe a little bit here as I sit here watching the local media on one of my televisions. So CeeDee Lamb, the arrival of Pickens, there's always the dual-edged sword. Oh, somebody come in and take some attention away from him. Also to draw some targets away. Nothing can slow the juggernaut to the CeeDee Lamb. Feel it or fuck it.
I'm gonna say feel it, even though I know that we're probably a little bit hyperbole. There's a little bit of a hyperbole there. He's one of the best receivers in the league, and really the best thing that George Pickens could do is study CeeDee Lamb. He may not be able to ever do everything Lamb does or be expected to, but he needs to watch how this guy runs routes, because he's one of the better route runners in the league. He can play all three positions really well. He's physical after the catch. He's physical at the catch point. He understands how to track the ball well. And Pickens is like an up and down ball tracker. And I don't mean in the sense that he doesn't see the ball. It's that he sees it late or reacts late as a result of that. So, yeah, I look at him and think that, Lamb is one of those guys that you can just kind of set it and forget it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Going well inside, like last year's wide receiver 1 in ADP going into the season. I mean, I don't know that he'll get ahead of Jamar Chase, but I think that range of outcomes is still possible for him. He's going as a wide receiver 3 or 4 right now. Dak Prescott suddenly a value at quarterback as, let's say, quarterback 18-ish.
Yeah, I think he is a value there, and I think it's because while George Pickens may not be as helpful to himself and his career as we would like, he is going to stretch the field, and that's going to be helpful for Prescott to spread the ball around. And I think that he's a legitimate threat that needs to be covered, and it does help it does help out overall because they have some promising underneath players. I mean, you think about Tolbert on the other side can be a threat downfield because now he's not going to get occupied by the main players. But you also get Kevontae Turpin, who's looked pretty good in the slot, and he's a big play option. So I think that that's one of those things that you can, look at and, feel like that you might get some value out of. Like Turpin to me could be like a waiver wire addition.
When you say Turpin, I bring up the centerfold of my next gen stats. And there he is, right at the top. 22.36 miles per hour last year, the fastest speed in the NFL. Not that it matters, I'm sure, Matt. Don't judge me, sir. All right, Roman Wilson. The talk is Jeremy Fowler, I think, reported this from ESPN. The Steelers believe Roman Wilson's ready to make the year 2 leap, that he's a different player from what we saw last year. I would say he would have to be a different player from what we saw last year. Like, we just have to see him. So what are your thoughts, Roman Wilson? Feel him or fuck him?
I feel the idea about being open to that possibility. I'd say fuck it to the fact that it's being talked about in May. May is always the time where they want to leak information to reporters and say, hey, pump up this guy. Their purpose is they want them to pump up this guy a little bit, get his confidence up, and hopefully have him continue doing what he's supposed to do to get better. And so there's that. But I would say this: until we see Roman Wilson beating players one-on-one at the boundary, on timing routes and on deeper routes where he's legitimately facing press man coverage, I'm not buying it. And I think the only time you're really going to see this is in scrimmages and in actual like preseason games and early in the season. You're going to start looking for those drum beats with him. And if he's playing in the slot, then you're not going to see a lot of that. And if that's the case, it might be a little easier for him, but is he going to overtake Calvin Austin? And I think a lot of people would say, well, yeah, because he's a higher draft pick in terms of value. But I think Austin has been limited too in this offense, and the moments when they try and when they feed him the ball, he does tend to show up. So, for me, I'm open to him making that leap, but I'm not believing it until I see it. And it's going to come down to route running and releasing from the line of scrimmage against physical coverage.
Yeah, we'll have more discussions of Wilson, the field or fucking favorite, Calvin Austin III, or DK Metcalf, Pat Freiermuth, when the quarterback situation straightened out there at some point in the looming future. Maybe this week when they're doing the schedules. I don't know. What have you heard? Joe Flacco will be Cleveland's starting quarterback week 1. Feel it or fuck it.
I'm feeling that. I know that there's lots of talk about it wouldn't be a good idea.
Lots of talk.
Let's put in these young players to evaluate. We didn't draft these guys to let them sit. We need to, and I'm like, no, these guys need to sit. And if you really want, you're not thinking in the manner of Cleveland wants to field a competitive football team. Do you really think Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski want to lose this year with what they have on the line and what they've asked to try and reinstate the offense to become? They got Flacco for a reason. He's comfortable with the system. They know what he does well. It fits what Cleveland wants to do. They want a power running game with play action passing. And Dylan Gabriel may be someone they liked more than everybody else, but they felt fit the Stefanski offense, and they'll give him an opportunity. And Sanders was someone either that they couldn't pass up in the 5th round, or that maybe they couldn't pass up because the owner is a fan of the same president who's tweeting about how it's a shame that Shedeur Sanders dropped in the draft. Whatever you want to believe in that, or I would just put it this way: the obvious answer is Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco's good enough to start. He's got the experience. He's still got the skills. I don't see how it's anything remotely otherwise.
Yeah, I don't know that we see a repeat of that late season run in 2023 that earned him comeback player of the year, where he was throwing for copious yards and turning Amari Cooper and David Njoku into league-winning assets. But he could do something good for Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy got 145 targets last season. And there's a reason he might get even more this year. And that would be the depth chart. Cedric Tillman, DeAndre Carter, Deontay Johnson, David Bell, Michael Woods too, Jamari Thrash. It's not a stellar group. When he got more than 6 targets a game, Jeudy averaged 16.4 fantasy points per game. But he did most of his damage with Jameis Winston, who is no longer on the roster. Right now, we've got Jeudy going as wide receiver 38 in the 5th round. Are you feeling that, or fuck it?
Oh, I'm totally feeling that. Jerry Jeudy is essentially an aspiring Reggie Wayne without the equity of Marvin Harrison alongside him. And that was basically the skill set Jeudy has. He's really more of a flanker who can get deep occasion with some of the speed, but he's more of a flanker. And I'm going to disagree with you about Flacco, because the main thing is when I watched him in Indianapolis and I watched Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis, those receivers couldn't hold on to the football. There were they had a lot of, Pittman was banged up to a severe degree, and that offensive line was not good. I think this offensive line is a little better. I think the receiving core is better. They actually have a legit tight end, which is something that Joe Flacco has always been good at flowing. Yeah, probably 2. And Joe Flacco's always been good at targeting the tight end. Indianapolis had like 4 tight ends, and not one of them was on par with the first 2 that Cleveland has.
So I'll just say this: that the big thing in Cleveland is said the people who cover the team closely say is protecting the ball. Flacco had like 6 turnovers in his last 4 games, so I mean he's not going to be able. They're going to be that's going to be a determining factor. I look at him and I don't know enough about Kenny Pickett to say he's better, right, than Joe Flacco. But he might be close. He has experience, and
he could be.
Maybe that's enough.
I forgot about him, honestly, as we're talking. I forgot about him because I was focused on the rookies. But It's Flacco and Pickett are the two reasons.
I agree with you that I think it's going to be Flacco. I just don't know how strong anybody's grip on the starting job will be this year if they're not servicing the run game by holding on to the football.
Yeah, if they're not winning. But I would say this. I know that Cleveland's cognicity of media writers are probably talking about the last 4 games, and I get that, but at the same time too, he didn't play the entire season, and there's an ebb and flow within the season. And while we like to emphasize, especially because GMs tell us this all the time and coaches tell us this all the time, every game counts so much in the NFL compared to hockey and basketball and baseball because the seasons are much longer. There still is an ebb and flow to football seasons. And especially with quarterbacks where they oftentimes go through little dips because teams figured out something that they were doing and they were getting away with it and having success with it early. And I think Flacco, because he started later in the year, he went through that dip at the worst time. And I think that if he starts at the beginning of the year, it won't be as problematic. But what I would agree with you is that they have a very reactive owner. They haven't been winning. And I would say that the whole city of Cleveland has kind of like been held hostage by this team for decades.
For 20 years or more.
Yeah.
It's been, I think, what is it?
It creates
a tough
mentality.
Since they came back. So it's not been good. They have not figured this situation out. They've
buy the RSP Cleveland Browns and follow quarterbacks there. That's all I would say. As a fan, even, I'm just begging you.
In New England, Stefon Diggs is on hand for the OTAs. He's working out. The teammates say he looks fantastic. Is he a steal at his current wide receiver 45 price?
I think he is, yes, because they're going to be able to. They'll either use him in the slot or as a flanker. He's going to be able to do good work there. He's a good route runner. The issue, of course, the biggest issue, of course, is after the injury, can he stay looking as healthy as he looks right now through the course of a season, being an older player? I would probably bet on it at wide receiver 45. Why not? So I'm feeling the idea of that because there's really nobody else on this team who runs routes as good as Diggs, who catches the ball as well as Diggs.
Some talk that he might see a lot of time in the slot. Mike Reese talked about this at ESPN, and what would that do to Demario Douglas, or is Demario Douglas a player we should even be interested in anyway?
He's a late round hedge. He might be relegated to punt returns. Then again, we joke that the Patriots, all they see is slot receivers, so maybe they could have 4 slot receivers or 3 slot receivers on the field at the same time. But Diggs, Demario Davis is the late round hedge to Diggs, and that's basically how we should see it.
I agree with that. Tre Harris, immediately of greater interest in Los Angeles than Quintin Johnston.
I feel it that he's of greater interest, but I don't necessarily doesn't mean that you actually are going to pull the trigger on it, because Tre Harris is more promising in the sense that he's a little better at catching the ball than Johnston is, but he's not as good of a route runner. Quintin Johnston is a very good route runner, and if I would hope that Tre Harris can be, that they could put Harris and Johnston on the field at the same time long term. Now I know Mike Williams is back, so he's probably going to man that X spot, and that means Harris and Johnston will probably be splitting the flanker role at this time. But I think that dynasty-wise, the answer is yes. Short term, I would say Johnston is probably still the guy you give the edge, And in 2 years, by the end of this season, we might go, wow, wait a minute, maybe Harris is going to get buried because Johnston actually is making plays, and they don't need him to be the contested catch player. They can just let him do what he does well.
Yeah, Daniel Popper from The Athletic suggesting that he has a uphill climb to make the roster at this point, being the last of the first-round picks of the Tom Telesco generation.
Really?
Yeah.
He's got an uphill climb to make the
uphill
roster.
Climb. That
Wow.
was the point. It might be a little high. I take that kind of with a grain of salt, but Popper's there every day, and so we'll see.
He might have heard from somebody that's what they're saying. And hey, I get it.
Or maybe that's what they're saying to motivate a player who's probably needs some motivation.
Yeah. I mean, look, the catch point stuff is difficult, and if they don't think they can get over that, then it would make sense to move on, and Harris can do that. He's just not the route runner Johnston is. And that, to me, getting open takes precedence over catching the ball at this stage, even though both are very close to being equal in importance.
Adam Thielen in Carolina says he's going to play probably one more year. This is likely to be his final season. Going into his final season, he is currently going as wide receiver 68 in the 14th round. Is that the right price? Feel it or fuck it?
Probably not, but I'll take it. I mean, like, you can move him up probably to wide receiver 48, and you can look at that and go, oh, well, yeah, him and Diggs are in the same area. Now, the big question is how much upside are you really getting at that point, and are you going to want to take Adam Thielen, who might give you 800, 900 yards and 4 to 6 touchdowns, and that's giving you low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 value, or would you rather take a running back who's on the verge of getting the starting job, or if the job is given to him due to injury, he could Jordan Mason his way into the top 5?
So I would say this about Adam Thielen. And I think it's like I say this all the time because it's true. We saw Bryce Young get better late last year. From weeks 12 through 18, I think Thielen was a wide receiver 1, right at that tail end. He was wide receiver 12 over that stretch from weeks 12 through 18. The year before, with Bryce Young throwing 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, Adam Thielen finished as wide receiver 18. For a good portion of the season, he was also wide receiver 12 or better. I think it's worth the gamble when you're going that late, and I think he's been dismissed too easily each of the last 2 years. And it didn't matter his quarterback play, didn't matter his situation. He got hurt last year, came back, and still finished strong.
Do you know who has to thank Adam Thielen for him still having a career right now? Stefon Diggs.
Oh, okay.
Because Stefon Diggs started in Minnesota, and Adam Thielen was instrumental in helping that guy learn how to refine his route running to the level that it is.
Who's going to help Matthew Golden refine his route running in Green Bay? Did the Packers – so a lot of talk about Christian Watson on tracks. Sounds like he's optimistic. I think optimistic means if you saw him in November or he started working in November and maybe we saw him late down the stretch, it would be great. But did the Packers draft Golden to be their wide receiver 1, or does it feel like maybe they're ready to move on from the Watson era?
Yeah, they're ready to move on from the Watson era, and they're probably going to move on from the Romeo Doubs era too. So it's very likely that they're seeing him as they're looking at him as a future starter who might be starting now, because there's not much to refine with the route running compared to a lot of rookies. Does it mean that he's a wide receiver 1 or more of a high-end wide receiver 2? I think he fits in that camp of Jordan Addison and Devonta Smith in terms of the types of players that, in the right circumstance, maybe they could be a wide receiver 1, but they don't necessarily. It would be better if they had a bigger guy who could be that, and then they could be a dynamic wide receiver 2. All that matters is that they did draft him to be one of their top 2 starters of the future, and I think that's good enough.
Woody Marks, let's close it out with this. Is Joe Mixon's getting a little older? Is Woody Marks a year away from a featured role in Houston?
I'm going to say fuck it, as much as I like Woody Marks. I think that I almost said Brick's granddaddy.
I think you did.
I did, kind of. But Woody Marks is I need to have proof that the organization is high enough on him to use him as a featured player. And I think most of these coaches look at a player by type and go, he's more of a scat back type who can be featured in space and be part of a committee, of a Thunder and Lightning committee. Like, to me, if you substituted Sampson with Marks in Cleveland with Judkins there, you'd still have an exciting 1-2 punch, you know. So I think he's going to be a fixture and a fantasy-worthy player. But are we talking about a running back 3, or are we talking about a running back 1? And I think we're more on the end of running back 3 for him, even though I love the skills.
Right, and I guess that's the thing. You're like, it seems like Houston is a place where running backs. I mean, we can go back to Slayton, to Foster, to Dominic Davis, to Dameon Pierce. I mean, running backs appear to come out of nowhere in Houston for some reason and serve us well, at least for a year or two. So.
Yeah, if you want a 1-year lottery ticket, you know, and you want to sell high in terms of not based on ability, but based on volume, because they go, oh, yeah, we need a running back, then Woody Marks could be that guy. He's going to be exciting when they put him on the field.
That's what we need to see.
You know,
and again, Joe Mixon's still locked in. Had to miss some time last year, but he was fairly durable. He came back quickly from a high ankle sprain and racked up tons of work. So expect more of the same. This year I'm drafting Joe Mixon as such, but might be in a dynasty draft where I'm trying to be a little speculative here. And I, too, like to get information from Matt Waldman. You can get your information from the Rookie Scouting Portfolio and this Fielder Bucket podcast, just like I do. Just go to mattwaldman.com. Make your purchase. Do it now.
Well, there we go. I
told him.
I appreciate it.
All right.
You know? So,
all right. That's it for this week.
Yeah.
We'll come back there. You want to sell anything else?
Sure. I got some socks on eBay that, you know, might be able to, you know, some sock hand puppets that troll Bob Harris. But, you know, that's basically
we've done a great job today.
The projections might be worthwhile to sell. We do RSP Dynasty Rankings and Projections. They'll be coming out in June, the first installment of that. So those of you who already bought it, they'll be out in the first 10 days of June. I'll email you when they're ready, and then you'll get subsequent updates. And I think 2 in August usually. Sometimes I do 3, and then you get 1 in September, October, and then probably either in November or December from there. So thanks again. And thanks for letting me do that, Bob.
Looking forward to that. Now you can get back to your dog eating batteries. I can get back to my cat eating my ankle, and we can carry on the rest of our day. It's been a fantastic episode. We'll be back next week for more. Love you, Matt.
Love you, bye.